Hello and good morning, good afternoon to everybody. I'm excited to share the microphone with these distinguished panelists, my friend Kerwin, Guillermo from HPE, Rose as well from Philip Morris, and then Tony, your keynote. So I know Siobhan called this a fireside chat, but in most parts of the world, I think it's summertime. So I'm going to consider this a campfire chat with roasted marshmallows. But we don't have a whole lot of time here, so let's get right to it. Tony, as Siobhan noted, those were some really interesting and insightful comments for how you framed everything there. Last year, all of us became accidental distributed leaders, right? So why is this topic important now? And just welcome your thoughts on that. And then, was there something that we might have missed last year during this journey that now we have to adjust to in a post-pandemic world?
Yeah, thank you, Peggy, and I'm very glad to be here on your panel. I think that now the idea of having a distributed workforce have synced in, and leaders last year they were very busy and overwhelmed. I mean, it was a very difficult year for everybody. So now it is becoming important that we rethink how we lead and enable our team, because we owe it to them to evolve the way we lead so that we can make them successful. And if you think about it, the best companies in the world in the future are going to be distributed because the talent is requiring more flexibility, so the best talent is going to gravitate around the best distributed companies. And where do you start? You start with leadership. This is where everything happened when it comes to empowering and enabling the organization.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. But Kerwin, I'd like to hear a little bit from you. What were maybe the 1 to 2 key takeaways from Tony, and then Rose, you as well?
Thank you. A couple of items. Number one is all about culture, how we operate, how we behave, how we clarify the rules of the road, so we become more predictable for each other. And number two is about engagement, an authentic and more compassionate approach to every interaction we have, whether with team members or customers. I'll add that. Again, at the end of the day, I've been part of dispersed teams, leading it, managing it for almost 20 years. At the end of the day, our why and the what does not radically change. It is in the how of achieving all of those where we need to adjust our game.
Yeah, I think that's really insightful that certain people with global teams that have had to manage, we've kind of been doing this for a while. It's just now that it's at such a broad level across every element of the business. But Rose, how about you? What are the 1 to 2 key takeaways from Tony's keynote that you believe are applicable in today's mobility landscape?
Well, exactly as you said, Peggy. I think we've been leading globally diverse teams for a long time, some of us 20 years or so. And therefore, the items I would pick up on are the trust and building relationships, making sure you give everybody airtime when you're talking to people. You are engaging with them on video screens a lot and not actually able to meet and pick up on the small signs that you might otherwise pick up. Also spending time, you would ordinarily spend time around the water cooler, around the coffee machine, making sure you pick up and understand how people tick and how they think and whether they are on board or not. A lot of that's disappeared and we haven't had the chance to build a relationship. And the second point I would pick up on is be present. I mean, we're talking about getting results, getting things done, results-driven culture. Be present when you're on the video. Make sure you tune in and listen. The habit of all of us is and in the past certainly, to sit and type away and do your emails at the same time as doing when you should be listening to a call and paying real attention. I think we've learned over the past 16 months, pay attention, keep with the story, and then you have a much better interaction and you feel more authentic and your staff feel that you're more authentic as well.
Yeah, you know what? That's an excellent point, Rose. The whole be present. I mean, I'm guilty myself, right? And I do remember the video spoofs. So when we did conference calls alone, and people would be, sort of saying, "Oh, I missed that. Could you say it again?" And really, all of us knew that they got busted because they were doing something they shouldn't be doing and trying to multitask. But I want to pivot a little bit. And Tony, you talked about organizational culture. And I want to talk about that because I feel like that's one of the risk elements in a distributed environment. So how can we care for that? How can we care for that organizational culture when we don't see each other every day? So anybody, I'd welcome your thoughts on that.
I think first we have to accept that culture is going to be different in a distributed setting, and it's going to be different because, as I said in my presentation, that our identity now is more diversified, and when we used to commute and spend more than 8 hours in our every day in an office, our life was work. Now we have family, we have community, we are more flexible. So that's a great news for the world and for people, right? So as leader, we have to accept that it's not going to be the same, and we need to restrict work to a specific part of our life, but that doesn't prevent us from building a strong culture, although it might be a restricted culture around work. It can be strong, and how do we, part of how we work together, the how, as Kerwin was saying, is how can you reinforce that, and how can you make this shared norms around the company to be strong is by modeling the way as a leader, and becoming yourself the best remote worker in the company.
Yeah. Kerwin, I see. Yeah, please.
Well, the part I'll connect to that is, again, growing up in a corporate culture where part of our DNA is that we partner, we innovate, and we act. Core to that is how we engage, energize, to collaborate, and win together. So for me, when I look at to your question, what are some of the signs in terms of health of our culture where it's starting to erode, being impacted? I look for a few diagnostic instruments that we apply on an ongoing basis: pulse feedback, surveys. We do focus groups intentionally to figure out where we are and what people are telling us, and other diagnostic devices, whether people are taking up their leave, that they're spending time off, they're caring for self. What I worry about in this environment coming from last year is really the crisis of burnout. I've read through research where really from Catalyst report that says 92+% of employees actually find that the threat of a real burnout crisis is very real for us, and they have experienced that at one point. Especially, that's something I worry about as we hopefully at the end of this pandemic.
Yeah, it's interesting, Kern. That used to be some of the things in the tech space was all around burnout. And now I think we are experiencing, because there is no boundary line between getting in my car when work started and ended. It's like you walk down 12 steps and you're in the office, right? Rose, love to hear from you and your colleagues and friends at PMI and how you all are working hard to protect the culture. And what do you look for at early signs of erosion?
Yeah, so I mean, we've been running regular pulse. So we do a regular pulse survey every quarter, which we've done throughout the past year through the pandemic, and as we're emerging slowly out of it. And that's testing the feeling and the emotional well-being as well as the physical well-being of our employees. We've also, put into place a lot of well-being. There's lots of tools and technologies and processes, as well as offers of help groups. We've actually had some very courageous individual employees who've actually sat in front of a screen and talked about how they felt, how they've dealt with it, the symptoms and signs, because they didn't see it coming themselves. And before the pandemic, they would never, ever have put themselves saw themselves as the type of person that would be subject to, emotional stress and mental health and well-being. So they've been very brave and courageous to be able to share it, to showcase to other employees as well that you're not alone. There's a lot of people feeling frustrated, feeling misadjusted, misaligned, and not knowing where they are in the world at the moment. So that has helped. But it's a strange topic to have to deal with in the corporate world, but we're trying our best to manage our way through, I think.
Yeah, that's a great segue because I've personally been paying a lot of attention and reading a lot more around the mental health aspect in a post-pandemic world, Rose. And I'd love to stay with you, but on this because of what you guys are doing at PMI, how can we, have awareness around that organizational mental health in a distributed environment? Because it's very different when I walk up to the water cooler and somebody's head is just hung low that day, or, you can just sense that feeling of something else is going on, and you can reach out and say, how are you? Is everything okay? How do you do that in a distributed environment with the screen? And I love hearing that baby.
Yes, that's my 1-year-old here wanting to come here to my office, and they're trying to stop him. But actually, very, very good question on mental health, and I think why there's such a high degree more mental health we're seeing today in the workforce, because many of us going to the office was a way of compensating. Think about extroverts that actually got their energy from the social interaction, and now they cannot do it anymore. That's just one example. So there's this kind of phase of adaptation that we need to go through, and that's creating one reason why it's actually difficult when it comes to emotional well-being. And what some of the recommendation I do is, one is, first, you need yourself to be open about it. You need to share yourself that you also are not a superwoman or a superman, and you as a leader, you can have problems and ask help from your teammates. Secondly, is about these well-being programs. So we at Oyster we have meditation classes. We have, part of the benefits is to really work with a psychologist by the company. So there's all these kind of wellness programs that are around mental health. And thirdly is really about thinking that it's not only about performance, and it's also about well-being. So you want to design your culture around that. And one sentence I usually use is, you want to make your company work for your people, and not your people work for your company. You want to make the work of the people to work for them first and foremost, no matter what their situation is.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, no, that's okay. You know what? We've all had that experience with the animal walking across or whatever. That's awesome. So great to hear the baby. But what about Kerwin, you or Rose? Any additional comments around mental health, and how is HR doing enough right now?
Let me share a little bit of the what before the how. There are fundamental human needs that employers can seek to address for employees that I've seen for HPE. Number one, financial security, emotional and mental well-being, a strong sense of belonging and inclusion, good physical health, purpose, having clarity of purpose, and having the skill set to advance in one's career. Those are, for me, what we are addressing. In terms of the how, 3 A's for us: awareness, appreciation, and application. I've seen our organization put a lot more investment in raising awareness of solutions and interventions that exist than an elevated appreciation for what they can do for ourselves, and sustained encouragement through celebrating so many of our role models who apply new behaviors, test new stuff in our community. 3 A's for us. Go ahead.
I love the triple A threat there. Rose, anything else you want to add before we move on?
There's not much I can add to what Kerwin said. I think he summed it up brilliantly. It is about kind of put your money where your mouth is as well. We talk about it, but you've got to put action into place and do things. And you have a personal responsibility, as Tony mentioned. You have a personal responsibility to look after yourself, look out for your colleagues, take note when you see things. It's hard, but if you pick up on telltale signs and symptoms, then do something about it. Don't just sit there and be oblivious to it or pretend you haven't seen. So there's nothing to add to what Kerwin said.
Awesome. Well, I have just a couple more questions. We're going to run tight on time here, but everything we've been talking about with respect to the distributed workforces and the culture is sort of against a backdrop of an assumptive that they're all full-time employees. So now we want to lay over the tapestry of we're not going to be that way. I mean, in the US alone, in just 3 or 4 years, they're talking about 50, half of our workforce are going to be part of this solo economy, individuals or gig workers. So I would just love to get your top-ended thoughts. Now, how do we think about, leadership and culture when you've got people coming in and off of, your full-time equivalent, but they're all on project teams? So we just welcome any thoughts around that from anybody. Kerwin, we'll start with you.
Oh. Well, if this is something I've seen actually our business carry out, through our broader transformation as we pivot to an as a service organization since 2019, figuring out where we sell direct to our customers, where we rely on channel partners, volume and value type balance. For our mobility team, for us ourselves, figuring out the talent that we need to be able to, based on the aspirations of our journey. So we end up challenging ourselves in terms of how we curate our team, in terms of traditional roles where we have, or where we could tap on freelancers, on provider network, so we may accelerate our pace. It's something that, again, I'd like to think we're doing, but what we're going through right now as a society, it's accelerated all of that.
Yeah. Tony, you talk a lot about the organizational level, and it's what your company does. What 2 to 3 top points that you think an organization needs to do to prepare with this, again, not a homogenous workforce now in a distributed world?
I think it's really how organizations see the workforce, and the definition of full-time versus non-full-time need to be a more fluid definition, so that you don't create unnecessary issues when it comes to collaboration and communication in the company. Like, I remember in my previous company, it was a public company, like contractors, they didn't have the same status in the company than non-contractors, and they couldn't really do their job well because of that status. So I think as we build these HR policies, we need to look at how do we see these people and avoid labeling them, and see them as people, as workers, and not necessarily as this status or this status. And that labeling can be dangerous, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, let me wrap. I want to go back to the mental health for a quick second. I'm going to wrap on this question, and we'll just go round robin. Tony, we'll start with you. But speaking of mental health, where is the first place that you plan to travel for pleasure this summer?
I'm actually going to France, in Normandy, and we have a place in the forest that I really like. So I can't wait to go back and see all these trees and nature.
Tony, when are you going? Because I might have to join you.
8 days to go. Well, you're welcome.
Okay, there you go. I'm going to get my ticket. I'm vaccinated, so I'm going to get my ticket. How about you, my friend Rose? Where will you go for the mental health summer vacation for pleasure?
Well, it'll have to be the beach. And unfortunately, because I'm in the UK, there's very few places we can go that we don't have to quarantine to go or to come back from. So it'll be a beach down in Cornwall in the UK, which may not be dry and sunny. It might be a bit rainy and blustery, but at least it'll be a breath of fresh air and a lovely change of scenery. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Awesome. Well, that sounds wonderful. But I'm going to go with Tony. I'm going to the Senate. Kerwin, how about you, friend? Where will you be headed?
Well, going through the pandemic, I was making sort of a bucket list of where I want to go after. But immediately right now, after this, I will visit you, Peggy. I miss you. And I know the rest of our mobility community misses you. So I want to spend more time with you. So I'll see you end of summer.
Well, get prepared, because we're going to see Tony. So you just need to pack a bigger bag, because that's where we're headed. Anyway, hey, let's give a big shout out to our distinguished panels. It's my honor to moderate you all. Lots more on this topic to come in the coming bits of time. And I turn it back over to our friends at GME. Thank you all.